this issue of video, I would like to take a look at the best mobile phone screens this year. This is a total of 92 mobile phones we have tested this year. I will first list their basic screen parameters. Can you find these rules? Guess who is the youngest here? Isn't it the Meizu 21? It's not the Xiaomi 14, it's the iPhone 15 and 15 Pro, and the Sony Xperia 5 Mark V. All of them are 6.1 inches. In addition to the 4 folding screens, there are 23 of the remaining 88 models that are 1080p screen, although the PPI can also be close to 400 Ah, but when compared with the PPI above 500, I can see the difference in the fineness of the screen. What about here? The most puzzling thing for me is actually the Meizu. You can see the iPhone 12 Pro, the 3 stars have the 2K of the, but it is still using the 1080p of the. What about us? We'll see, right? If you are an LCD party, that doesn't mean anything. There are fewer options this year, and they are all low-end and mid-range models. I will advise you again, let's still look forward. LCD, is it really impossible to go back? Five out of 7 models are LCDs, which means that if you only choose OLED, then it is basically 120 Hz as a base. I will remove these basic configurations that are a little worse first. See how much money is left. Meizu 21, keep it first. After all, IT is the latest digital flagship. To wait for a while. Look at the other parts of it. Are you surprised at the end? Okay, after sifting out, 28 were removed, and there are 64 left, and then it's time to spell out the optical performance. All in all, my biggest feeling is that the domestic screen is really good. If you want to find the best one, what about us, or do you have to explain the selection logic clearly, as a show that the industry has been a practitioner? I want to tell you, usually only look at the white spot, i.e. do you believe it? That is still the screen that most people generally think of. The most important things in the curtain are the resolution, the brightness, the color gamut and the color resolution, which represent the clarity and the freshness rate, and the brightness is also crucial. It will make the screen look more transparent, and to put it bluntly, it is the range of colors that can be displayed on the screen, and the wider the color gamut, the more gorgeous it is. What about color accuracy, which is the accuracy of the screen when displaying each color? But as the attention of the majority of families to screen flash is getting higher and higher, the dimming eye protection of mobile phones has also become more and more important. So this time, I will look at how good the 64 models can be from the 3 major blocks of brightness, color display, dimming and eye protection, combine the measured data and subjective experience on the screen, and what is the difference? Brightness, I think it's the most obvious of all the performance indicators on the screen. If the brightness is not enough, the direct light perception is not clear. Theoretically, it must be as high as possible, but on the one hand, is the power consumption higher? What about 2? As far as OLED is concerned, will the life of the luminous material still be affected? So OLED has the 2 concepts of maximum brightness and exciting brightness. We now pay more attention to the brightness of the screen. One is the stimulation, which can better reflect the actual ability of the screen, and have a greater impact on the light perception. Second, what about our brightness settings, which is generally a time when manual adjustment is required automatically? This is our test system. It is a set of 5-axis operating machine main test equipment, is Konica, each person holding the CS2000A. Through the computer software control, we can make the mobile phone display different colors, spatial standard samples, which were then measured by the CS2000A for brightness consultations. And if we only measure the data of one central point, we don't think it's enough, then we have to rely on the machine. We can measure 25 points of the screen or even more. What about when we use our mobile phones, which rarely have a certain angle deviation when they are facing the screen? Although the current OLED viewing angle is very good, but the angle is different from the color accuracy at the angle of view. Do you see this disc? In fact, this set of equipment can be rotated up and down, left and right. The software and hardware are added together to almost 500,000 yuan, and in the objective observation test of the screen, it has basically reached the top. Is not too expensive but also expensive. Isn't it just accurate and reliable what the test is looking for? Let's talk about brightness again. Even if you are running for the best screen, the maximum brightness of the hand cannot be low. I think it is at least 550 nit. You look at these 7 models are all above 850 nit. The best one is the iPhone 15 Pro 948.26 nit. Guess the worst is who is Realme GT 5240 watts 512.03 nit. This data is not bad. This year it is true that the overall brightness of OLED has been improved. Good things, good things, good things. Exciting brightness is actually more important. Among the 64 models, the best performance is OnePlus 12, and the brightness soars directly to 1700 nit. Is a bit scary, but what is the worst? 749.83 nit Nubia Ultra. It was released in March, Now you can see the technology of domestically produced OLED in the second half of the year, and the adjustment and change in strategy are still quite large. Only 8 of the 64 models do not have more than 1000, so I have to set the screening rules again. I must adjust it up to 1100 nits, and all mobile phones must be 550 nits and 1100 nits at the same time. These two conditions can be regarded as passing. What about this selection? Out of 28 and 36 left, the next thing is the color display. There is no doubt about the importance of color, but the most important of them is the color gamut and color accuracy. What about the default color mode of the 36 models, which are basically so? Let's focus on the color gamut and its corresponding color standards. Except for individual models, the color gamut coverage rate is very different, but when it comes to the color standard, it is more than a test of the factory's tuning ability. The final test results are indeed the same. The 36 models still have some differences in color accuracy, but none of them are big, because most of them are basically controlled within 5 days. This time there are a total of 124 cameras of 8 models, and the average delta is not wrong with less than 3. 1 plus 12. Let me tell you this, friends who care about color standards may see the color standard data of officials or other platforms. What about their delta E? The probability is smaller. This has a lot to do with the color standard and the number of tests. You are like display mate, which is actually an expression of a color difference. It is 41 color scales. What about the usual upstream, generally also measure the 4 colors of RGBW? We are referring to the 124 color scales of color love, so the average color difference, surely it will be bigger than them. Then we will test more colors. Because the more colors, the more accurate and reasonable the final result. Data stuffed here, most of them are already very strong, but the strong have their own strong hands. Let's raise the rules by another layer of color gamut coverage of exactly -2%, that is, 98% to 102% of the color gamut coverage. Delta E is controlled below 4. Such a selection, in the end there are only these 17 mobile phones left. Here you can see that the iPhone is still very strong in the consistency of the entire product line, but what about the domestic manufacturers are already very bad, especially the Glory and Glory of the Plus. And there is still a little bit here. You see the color temperature on the back of the iPhone is tacitly at 6500K. What about this one? We look a little warm and yellow, but Apple's, in order to take care of global consumers, we have to do this. Huawei is the same. But if you don't like this kind of warm style, what about this year's domestic brands? There are also top-of-the-line OLED screens like the OnePlus 12 Glory Magic 5 Extreme Edition. Of course, these are just purely numerical comparisons, but what about the specific perception, or do you have to look at the actual results and your own happiness? I'm here, put them all out, cut a few pictures with their tacit color patterns. I hope to give you some reference. Is eye care metaphysics? Yes or no? Is it because it has a direct relationship with the body's functions and conditions, and everyone is different, but it is not because there is some quantification at the moment of dimensions and methods, although it is accurate, but at least data represented. At present, the most commonly received by the big family is blue light, the other is stroboscopic light, which is the dimming strategy of the manufacturers. When the screen shows the white picture, what is its light spectrum? It is also the strongest group. Let's focus on the nanometer number of the crest position. The smaller the value, the higher the energy and the greater the danger. What about the blue light peak, which is generally around 455 nanometers, so how can I adjust it to be healthier? That's right, redshifted. Shift the peak position to the right as much as possible to ensure that the blue light ratio remains unchanged. The intensity of blue light is weaker than before. If you look at the optical spectrum of the 17 screen eye protection models, there are still some differences. In addition, we have sorted out the position of the blue light crest of all the screens. Can you see that the blue light crest position of the 6 3-star screens is on the small side, like the iPhone 15 Pro Max is 457 nanometers. Just look at this point, domestic products are more eye-friendly than 3-star. But just looking at the crest of the wave is really not enough. The most direct way is to calculate the area of blue light in the spectrum, and then divide it by the area of the entire spectrum. We have also figured out these things. Can you take a look at the interesting words, and then the strobe, but in fact it will be highlighted by the human eye in a low brightness scene, and it is easier to perceive and be affected. So, let's focus on their PWM dimming frequency at low brightness. The highest of the 17 models is the glorious 100 Pro Magic and 90 Pro, all three of which are. It's all 3840 Hz, of course this one isn't as high as possible. What about the next OnePlus 12, and the 3 models of the Magic 5 series are all 2160 Hz 3-star, and this time on the also uses high-frequency PWM dimming. You are like the Meizu 21, it is 1920 Hz that is highlighted. The degree is basically a plus type DC dimming here is not too much the same, it goes more extreme in 8 miles, it can be regarded as a new definition of the 3 plus type DC dimming technology. Is it really to be more advanced in the overall view? Jingdong washing optoelectronics and Visionox are still consistent high-frequency PWMs in this regard. Domestic OLED is still more advantageous than Sansheng, or is it better to understand users? Okay, let's go down and dim it. So what about when it comes? There are only 7 left. Let's take a look at the color gamut and color standard under their sRGB and the same standard as, there are only 3 left. Plus the Chinese people's happy and cold perception, there is only 1 plus 12 left, but is it really that good? We did a great job on 3 different colors of 1 plus 12 detailed remeasurements include brightness uniformity across the screen, color deviation at multiple viewing angles, etc. The final test results are like this. After reading these, do you think 1 plus 12 is the best screen for comprehensive ability this year? Can you discuss it with us in the barrage or comment section? In general, compared with this whole series, the performance of domestic OLEDs still makes me quite satisfied. Whether it is Huasheng Optoelectronics Tianma Plus and Visionox, or Jingdong's Plus compared with the latest of Sansheng, they are all not comparable, and more importantly, they understand the needs of domestic consumers better. Okay, that's all for the annual review of the 92 mobile phone screens. If you think what you did on video is not wrong, welcome to follow and like to collect and repost.